Joining me on the telecast is Ambassador K.P. Fabian. He's the former diplomat. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. First things first, what do you understand the key takeaway from the joint statement, beg your pardon, not the joint statement, but the Minister of External Affairs coming out and making a statement, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also making that statement saying that, all lines of communication are open between China and India, and of course Chinese side also reciprocating with the kind of approach, with the kind of communication that it has put out on the global media. How do you understand?
Well, this is certainly a most welcome development. India and China are the two giants in Asia, and it is not good that they do not communicate, that they do not have good neighborly relations. So this is, that a few days ago, there was agreement about patrolling and also about disengagement. Of course, I should say that I did notice, and others also might have, that the Chinese statement said about the terms of the agreement. They didn't specify what exactly was agreed upon, but that is their style. All that I would say is that it is good that the two leaders met after 5 years. Now, most commentators go back to, 2020, Galwan and all that. I would suggest that we might go back a few years more. You remember the Doklam incident?
Right, and, yes.
And that too was before a BRICS meeting, which in that case, President Xi Jinping was chairing it. And if I remember right, on the 28th of August, the agreement was announced, and the 5th of September, the two leaders met. That is, Prime Minister Modi went to China for that meeting. Now, just a point that there is reason to believe that the Chinese side did not fully respect the Doklam agreement. So all that I would say is that, as President Reagan said a long time ago, trust, but do not stop verifying.
Right, absolutely. Mr. Fabian, we have taken a look at what has happened in the past with China. Every single time there is some sort of an agreement that happens between both the countries. Somehow China springs a surprise and it decides to follow its own policy, breaking all sorts of tie-ups or agreements or guidelines that had to be followed into the bin. How should we trust China and understand that this time things would be different?
Well, whether this time it will be different or not, we'll have to wait and see. But let me also add a point. Were I a Chinese diplomat, I would have kept the border issue with India, pending. I would not have agreed to a final settlement, because it will be in my interest to keep the pot boiling from time to time. You see, that would have been my interest if were I a Chinese diplomat. So I think we can have stretches of agreement, but we should not rule out further stretches of disagreement. And in this case, China also was keen to have an agreement because, China's economy, of course, much larger than that of India. It has its own problems, property market and falling consumer confidence. And of course, China also has increasing problems with the West, whether it's about electrical cars or other things, So it is in China's interest also to have a certain, rapprochement with India. But as I said, we should not lull into believing that, this is the beginning of a permanent, sort of period of peace and tranquility and full-throated cooperation with China. No, it has to go step by step.
Yeah, but since you've spoken about how there are internal conflicts, flailing economy that China at this point of time is trying to figure out, trying to bring about some sort of a semblance of normalcy. On the other hand, it has, waged wars on several fronts in the Indo-Pacific region. Now, whether it is Taiwan or Japan or the Philippines, and the aggressiveness it has shown in the South China Sea against the ASEAN nations. Do you think China at this point of time is also reflecting on whether it is capable to wage multiple wars on all these fronts, and therefore looking to have some sort of a agreement, some sort of amelioration of ties between both the countries, and therefore coming to this conclusion?
Well, you mentioned about Quad, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. Now, let us be realistic. China took aggressive action against the Philippines, as you mentioned. What did the Quad do? Quad could not do much about it. The United States also could not do much about it. So, China has, in violation of UNCLOS, that is UN law on the Convention on the Law of the Seas, China has encroached on what is due, maritime territory, which is within the rights of others. And that encroachment, I don't think it is going to be reversed, So, but on the other hand, Quad has made some progress about supply chain and other matters. But I don't think Quad will be able to reverse Chinese aggressive actions. And as in the case of the Philippines, I don't think Quad or even America can do much about it.
Okay, all right. Stay on with me, Ambassador. I also have with me on the telecast Professor Swaran Singh. Thank you very much for joining me. And first things first, how should India be cautiously approaching this set of developments that have taken place? Do you think there has been a conscious effort from India's side as well, that in the run-up to the BRICS Summit, and therefore to ensure and arrange that there is a bilateral meeting happens between both the countries, both the heads of the states, there was this need of communication and some sort of a thought to be visible to the world, that China is not just saying that it is looking to de-escalate, but it is actually doing what it has said.
Let me say that I fully agree with Ambassador Fabian's analysis. When it comes to China, which is India's largest and inordinately powerful country, India has to be cautious and alert all the time. Watch every moment, every action that China takes in that sense. Second point, communications between India and China are always there. Sometimes they are dormant, they are less frequent, sometimes they are more frequent. Intention is more important, and when there is intention from the top level, then those communications become effective, otherwise they stay ineffective over a period of time. Third point, when it comes to the Monday agreement, it's a simple, limited agreement on grazing and patrolling arrangements in 2 points of the 7 that were originally in dispute when Chinese had ingressed into India in February of 2020. These last 2, Damchok and Depsang, are where simply arrangements of grazing and patrolling are agreed upon. Lot is yet to be done in that sense of whether it is disengagement or de-escalation or going back to February 2020 or going back to the whole peace and tranquility chapter, or as the foreign minister says, we need a new chapter on CBMs. And as yet, I'm not even talking of demarcation of the border. This is the longest disputed boundary on the planet between 2 of world's largest population countries with nuclear weapons and so on. So it's going to be not so easy. And I think therefore the Monday agreement must be put in perspective as a limited inflection point, which in the backdrop of BRICS Summit has facilitated a formal bilateral delegation level conversation between China and India. Now 2 leaders have been meeting all this time now. It's not just 2019 Chennai meeting. They met in the Bali G20 summit, simply exchanging pleasantries, shall we say, gauging each other's body language and so on. they had a meeting, informal meeting last year in Johannesburg, which was not publicized by India. Wang Yi, the foreign minister of China, revealed it later. So leaders were meeting off and on. Now foreign ministers were meeting more regularly. In July, they had twice meeting. Then National Security Advisor had a meeting. So communications and meetings were all the time happening. They chose a certain point in time, I think in the backdrop of BRICS, as Ambassador Fabian said, 2017, same story, that they decided to have a conversation, a delegation level formal talks. Both have welcomed, formally as I read now, both have welcomed the agreement, but also said that multilateral forums are not a discussion place for bilateral issues. Slight difference between India and China. Indian Prime Minister apparently, as I read, said that these kind of differences of perception on the boundary should not be allowed to disrupt the peace between two nations. Whereas the Chinese president apparently said that we need to strengthen communications so that we can work together and not become a hurdle in each other's developmental trajectories. So there's a slight variation in how two leaders, apparently the way I read it now, maybe more detailed reports will come later. China definitely looks at India as the only neighboring country which has stood up for these 4.5 years. ASEAN has not, will not ever stand up to China, is my own analysis. They have 4 of the 10 countries having disputes in South China Sea, but take it from me, they will never stand up to China. China today has $700 billion of trade with ASEAN countries. So in that sense, India was an unusual example of a country standing up to China and having a global acceptance level very different compared to any other neighbor of China. And that, stature of India is something that must have compelled Chinese leadership over a period of time, looking that India is not ready to blink first, to finally find some kind of an arrangement where two leaders can formally meet. I hope they will restart their informal summit meetings again, which is, I think, a most innovative structure that these two leaders had created. And if that is revived, there is a hope that incrementally, step by step, in next 10 years or 50 years, they will perhaps work towards resolution of border, or by that time they will think this is completely irrelevant issue to even think about. They will do things together in many other areas at regional, global level, in cyberspace, in outer space, and on open oceans, and so on. Some of these things will become over a period of time redundant, is also my own understanding.
Okay, all right. I also have with me Major General Rajan Kochar, and the plight of the troops that have been deployed for the last 4 years along the line of actual control is something that has to be the front and center of things. And once again, we are approaching winters. Do you think that this de-escalation could happen and demilitarization can take place so that there can be reduction of troops, or should we be still guarded and continue to have our troops despite the promises being made by China?
Minka, I think diplomats can paint a vision and tell us in broad aspects of what this meeting means and what this patrolling point means. But the brass tacks is with the armed forces, the Indian Army, which is deployed at an altitude of 18,000 feet and minus 30 degrees temperature, 24/7. Even animals can't survive in this kind of a harsh climate. So we need to understand there are approximately 1,20,000 troops involved on both sides, which are deployed eyeball to eyeball. It is unprecedented because line of actual control, we never saw this kind of deployment as we see on the line of control. So I will take your attention to about a day back when the army chief has made a statement, and he has been very, very categorical about it that Chinese cannot be trusted. I will take your attention to 2014 Chumar, 2017 Doklam, 2020 Galwan, and also Yangtze, which happened after 2020, I think probably 21 it happened there. So we are seeing, we are trying to assess what has made the Chinese blink. Because you see, China is already in a fairly good comfort zone on the line of control because it's occupying more than 1,000 square kilometers of the disputed areas. China has also reportedly established 22 villages in the Doklam area, around 100 villages in the Arunachal Pradesh area. Also, I would like to draw your attention to the border laws, which we have not actually discussed, which have serious implications here, where China has put through 3 border laws, and the essence of these border laws is that our habitat, if it is attacked, if our villages, what we have constructed on this line of actual control, if anyone attempts to attack or be aggressive, it will be termed as an attack on our sovereignty. So what we are seeing now is, I would just like to conclude here, what we are seeing now is that certain compulsions have forced both the countries to come to some kind of an agreement, and patrolling is the easiest thing to do without de-escalation, without disengagement, and without de-induction. So, coming to your specific point, after I've explained these things, I don't see any of these 3 things happening so soon. It will take time. We can be hopeful, but at the end of the day, always remember that Chinese cannot be trusted.
Okay, all right. Quickly then, Namrata, are Chinese to be trusted? How do we move forward in our building our equation with China?
Thanks, Mr. Sharma. I think it's a good first step, but I am very cautiously optimistic, more cautious than being optimistic. Knowing the sequence of events, I really don't want to repeat. My co-panelists have already spoken about it. And neither will I use the words which a lot of people are using, reset, breakthrough. The same we used when the Wuhan summit happened, the Chennai summit happened. I don't think it's yes, it's a good first step, but it's a very small step. And we have zero trust right now. And to rebuild that trust will take a lot of time. A lot will depend on how this agreement on patrolling will be carried out. And let's not forget, Ms. Sharma, I will like to just point out 2 things here. First, of course, is the 20th Party Congress, where where this a small clip of Galwan Valley was played, where the past, present, and the future leadership is present. Then, at the 19th Party Congress, Xi Jinping made it very clear about the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. And the first point in that is to recover the lost territories, which are, according to them, Arunachal Pradesh, Ladakh, South China Sea, Taiwan. So how do you not fit this into the larger picture?
Right.
And the Chinese actions that have happened, I would say, of course, over the years, but right from the 2013 incursion, when Prime Minister Li Keqiang was here, I think after that, the incursions, we saw like a big change in the incursions that happened. And so for me, I think to rebuild the trust is very important, and it will take a long time. Plus, the Chinese have been pushing to have business as usual, especially on with the economic ties. I think that will be a mistake if we start doing that, especially when India's security is in question in many things.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.